Welcome to the world of ancient India, where seekers walk barefoot. Tonight, we settle into the quiet rhythm of a disciple's journey, walking beside the Buddha himself. Now, before we step onto those dusty paths, find your own comfortable spot. Sink into your chair, let your shoulders relax, and maybe tuck a blanket around you. This is your moment to simply be. Where are you tuning in from tonight, and what time is it? Is it the cozy twilight in your corner of the world, or perhaps a bright morning that's already demanding your attention? Whatever the hour, I hope you're finding a peaceful pause. If you're enjoying these quiet explorations, consider subscribing so you never miss a moment of our journey. It helps us keep these stories coming. Now, let's drift back to a time of simple robes and profound questions. You've heard whispers, perhaps from travelers resting by the roadside, of a wise man named Siddhartha Gautama. Driven by a deep yearning for understanding, you've joined his growing circle, your sandals kicking up the ancient dust, eager to learn the secrets of a life freed from suffering. You stand on a road that has seen more dust than rain, your body lean from years spent seeking answers through harsh self-denial. The rough fabric of your robes scrapes against your skin, a familiar sensation that now feels less like a chosen austerity and more like a relentless burden. Around you, the air hums with the endless buzz of insects, and the distant bleating of goats drifts on the breeze. Sounds that have been the soundtrack to your solitary quest for so long. For years, you have pushed your body to its limits, hoping to outrun or outpunish the deep-seated dissatisfaction that seems to be a part of all existence. But instead, you've only found exhaustion. Despite the weariness, a faint, sweet scent of sandalwood incense reaches you, a familiar aroma that hints at sacred spaces and the deep human need for peace. Looking around, you see the vibrant colors of villagers' saris, a splash of brilliant crimson and saffron against the muted browns and greens of the landscape as they go about their daily tasks. The ground beneath your worn sandals is dry and uneven, each step a reminder of the many miles you've already traveled in search of something more, something lasting. Yet the world continues its relentless rhythm, indifferent to your inner struggle. Lately, these whispers have been growing louder, carried on the wind and exchanged around meager fires where travelers rest their weary bones. Whispers of a man named Siddhartha Gautama. Some claim he has found a path beyond the suffering that has plagued you, a way to true peace that doesn't involve the extremes of self-mortification. Others, however, dismiss him as just another pretender, another guru offering false promises in a world already full of them. A flicker of hope, a sensation you haven't truly felt in years, begins to stir within you, a small ember glowing in the ashes of your past austerities. This flicker of hope compels you to make a choice. Do you continue your solitary quest, clinging to the familiar rigors of your ascetic path, a path that has offered little but pain and exhaustion? Or do you turn your steps towards the villages where his teachings are said to be spreading, venturing into the unknown to find this rumored teacher? This decision feels momentous, a crossroads where your entire existence hinges on which direction you choose to walk. Following the vague directions you received, you begin to move through the small hamlets dotting the landscape. Your initial journey, a quiet observation of the world outside your own intense focus. You witness the simple lives of the people. A farmer, his brow furrowed with the effort of tending his field, his hands weathered by years of labor. Or children playing with makeshift toys, their laughter a bright, pure sound against the backdrop of their parents' struggles. These everyday scenes, so different from the austere practices you've known, begin to paint a picture of a shared human experience, a tapestry woven with both hardship and joy. The deep weariness that has been your constant companion begins to recede, replaced by a nascent curiosity, a desire to understand the lives you are witnessing. The constant striving of your ascetic life has yielded little in the way of lasting peace, only deeper exhaustion and a more profound sense of emptiness. The rumors of this Gautama, however, offer a different kind of promise. Not more self-punishment, but understanding. A concept that feels refreshingly new and profoundly attractive. It's as if the world itself is trying to nudge you towards a new path, away from the dead ends you've explored. As you observe these people, you begin to learn that the world outside your chosen ascetic practices is a vast and varied place, filled with countless human experiences that you had, in your singular focus, overlooked. You see that suffering, in its many forms, exists for everyone, regardless of their path or their chosen practices. And this realization fuels your desire to find a true solution, a way to address this universal condition. This is not about you anymore. It is about a deeper, shared reality. This chapter marks a significant shift, moving you from a potentially closed-off seeker, locked into your own methods, to someone who is tentatively opening themselves to new possibilities. The seeds of doubt about your current solitary path have been sown, nurtured by the simple observation of others and the persistent whispers of a different way. You are beginning to question whether the extreme path you followed is truly the only way, or if perhaps a gentler, more understanding approach might hold the answers you've been seeking for so long. You find yourself at the edge of a tranquil bamboo grove, a place that feels immediately different from the dusty roads you've traveled. Sunlight filters through the tall, graceful stalks, dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow. And the air here is noticeably cooler, fresher than it was on the open path. A soft, rhythmic whisper fills the space as the leaves rustle, a calming sound that seems to wash away some of the tension you've carried for so long. The scent of sandalwood incense, which you first noticed from afar, is stronger here, mingling with the clean, green aroma of the bamboo itself. The rough texture of your robes against your skin, a sensation that has been a constant reminder of your chosen path, suddenly feels less comforting, more like an unnecessary burden. As you move closer to the source of the gentle sounds and scents, you see a gathering of people seated with quiet reverence, their faces turned towards the center. There, you see the figure you've heard so much about, Siddhartha Gautama, radiating an aura of profound calm that seems to settle over the entire grove. This presence is palpable, drawing you in. You join the others, finding a spot on your own simple meditation mat, a worn piece of cloth that has served as your bedroll and seat for years. The familiar roughness now feeling a little out of place among the more uniform mats of the other disciples. As you settle in, a young monk, his head shaved and his robes the same faded saffron as yours, approaches you. He offers a small portion of simple alms food, a gesture of inclusion that feels both foreign and strangely welcoming. This offering challenges a part of you that has long denied its own needs. Do you accept this offering, acknowledging a need you've long denied and embracing this act of shared sustenance? Or do you politely decline, maintaining your solitary resolve and clinging to the ingrained habits of your past? Your decision here is a small but significant step, a test of whether you are ready to receive what is being offered, both literally and figuratively. The Buddha then begins to speak, his voice not loud or commanding, but gentle and clear, a sound that resonates deeply within you. He speaks of suffering, a term that encompasses not just physical pain, but a deeper, underlying dissatisfaction that seems to be a part of all existence. He introduces the concept of the Four Noble Truths, a framework for understanding this suffering and its cessation, not through grueling penance, but through clear insight. You are struck by the directness and practicality of his words, a stark contrast to the abstract, often convoluted philosophies you've encountered in your years of searching, and you find yourself leaning in, eager to absorb every word. A profound sense of stillness washes over you, a peace you haven't experienced even during your deepest meditations. And beneath that peace, a quiet excitement begins to bubble. It feels as if you have arrived at a place of true learning, a place where genuine answers might be found. Yet a subtle current of apprehension runs beneath it all. This path seems to require a different kind of surrender, a relinquishing of control that feels both terrifying and exhilarating. You are beginning to understand that enlightenment might not be about achieving an extreme state, but about understanding a fundamental aspect of life itself. The crisp morning air carries the promise of a new day as you walk through a small village, your empty alms bowl held before you, its polished surface reflecting the nascent hues of orange and pink painting the sky over the distant Ganges River. This practice of begging for food, a central tenet of the monastic life here, is still new to you, and frankly, it remains humbling, challenging your deeply ingrained sense of self-reliance. The taste of the simple alms food you receive, often a bit of rice, lentils, or vegetables, is usually plain but always nourishing, a welcome sustenance. You feel the weight of the alms bowl in your hands, a symbol of your dependence on the generosity of others, and a tangible reminder of your commitment to this new way of life. The sounds of the village are a low murmur as people begin their day. The gentle clatter of pots, the soft sounds of greetings exchanged, all forming a backdrop to your own quiet progress. It's during these walks that you truly begin to understand the practice of dana, or giving, and its importance in fostering generosity and building community, seeing how even the smallest offering can create a ripple effect. Today, as you approach a particular home, a woman, the wife of a wealthy merchant, comes out. Her face is etched with worry, but as she offers you a generous portion of food, she meets your gaze with a knowing look, as if she sees past your robes and into your inner struggle. This encounter brings the concept of non-attachment to the forefront of your mind, a teaching you've been grappling with. You understand that clinging to worldly possessions, even the food that sustains you, can obstruct your progress. Do you simply accept the alms with gratitude as instructed, or do you feel compelled to offer a brief word of blessing or acknowledgement of her offering, perhaps hinting at your own search for peace and the understanding you are seeking from this teacher? This is a delicate balance, and your choice here will reflect your growing understanding of how to interact with the world from your new perspective, trying to offer kindness without creating further attachment. You also observe the Buddha himself receiving alms with the same serene equanimity, whether from a king's table or a humble farmer's hand, a powerful lesson in non-judgment. You sit in a circle with other monks in a sun-dappled bamboo grove, the air alive with the murmur of discussion, today's topic being the nature of the self. The familiar urge to assert your own learned opinions, to prove your intellectual prowess, a habit from your ascetic days, surfaces, and you have to actively work to quiet it. The scent of sandalwood incense is a constant presence, grounding the often heated philosophical discussions, and you feel the smooth surface of your meditation mat beneath you. The sounds of chanting, punctuated by the Buddha's gentle voice whenever a discussion becomes too sharp, create a unique rhythm to your days here. A learned monk who has spent years studying ancient texts presents a complex argument about the permanent nature of the soul, directly challenging the Buddha's teachings on impermanence. He speaks with conviction, his words echoing the philosophical debates you were once a part of, and you feel a pang of recognition for his earnestness. This is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is a genuine attempt to grasp the profound truths being presented. And the Buddha, when he intervenes, doesn't declare one monk right and another wrong. Instead, he guides the conversation, gently pointing out the subtle clinging to concepts that perpetuate suffering, and you witness firsthand his masterful way of teaching. He introduces the concept of anatta, no self, the idea that there is no permanent, unchanging self or soul, a concept that is profoundly unsettling and directly contradicts much of your previous understanding. You grapple with doubt. Is this teacher leading you astray, or is your own mind resisting a truth too vast to comprehend? Do you remain silent, a silent observer of this unfolding debate? Or do you cautiously voice your own understanding, seeking clarification from the Buddha, even if it means stepping out of your comfort zone? This is a moment for intellectual humility, a chance to learn the difference between accumulating knowledge and achieving genuine wisdom. And you realize how deeply attachment to ideas can be as strong as attachment to material things. Your intellectual pride is challenged, and you begin to understand that true understanding comes not from winning arguments, but from opening your mind to new perspectives, a vital step in your journey. While meditating in the quiet solitude of the bamboo grove, the usual peace is disturbed by a flicker of memory, a face from your past, the comfort of familiar surroundings, the taste of a meal you once enjoyed. These thoughts are like sharp thorns pricking at your newfound calm, and you recognize them as the subtle hindrances the Buddha has spoken about, the remnants of old attachments that can still cause disturbance. The scent of sandalwood incense, usually a comforting anchor, now seems to stand against the internal turbulence, a reminder of your present commitment. You hear the distant sounds of villagers' laughter, and instead of being a neutral observation, it now seems to highlight the simple pleasures you've left behind, creating a longing for what was familiar. A former associate from your ascetic days, having heard of your joining the Sangha, has sought you out and stands outside the grove, looking somewhat bewildered but eager to speak. He represents the life you knew, the path you walked, and his presence here is a test of your resolve. Do you meet with him, perhaps to explain your new path? Or do you firmly decline, knowing that such an encounter might reawaken dormant attachments and pull you back towards your old ways? You might encounter temptations in many forms, not necessarily grand schemes, but the subtle pull of old habits, desires, and attachments. And you must actively choose to stay present and focused on the teachings. The Buddha's teachings on the Eightfold Path, a guide to right understanding, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, become your constant reference point, guiding you to practice right thought and right action in these moments. You feel a strong pull towards the past, a sense of longing for what was familiar, and doubt resurfaces. Was your old life so bad? Is this new path too austere, too alienating? You understand that renunciation isn't about erasing your past, but about transforming your relationship with it, learning that clinging to pleasant memories or experiences is a form of attachment that obstructs progress. This is where you gain a deeper understanding of temptation, not as an external force, but as an internal reaction, a product of your own mind's conditioning, and your choice here will shape your continued progress. You are in a small, open space near the Buddha. The gathering of monks smaller today, more intimate, and you feel a nervous anticipation, a sense that the Buddha might address you or your particular struggles directly. The scent of sandalwood incense fills the air, creating a sacred atmosphere, and you feel the texture of your rough robes. But today, it feels less like a hardship and more like a chosen identity, a symbol of your dedication. You hear the Buddha's gentle voice, each word carrying immense weight and compassion, and you see his alms bowl, a simple vessel that holds profound meaning in its emptiness and its ability to receive sustenance. You have been wrestling with a specific doubt about the nature of suffering, a lingering question that even your fellow monks haven't fully addressed. And now is your chance for clarity. When the Buddha pauses, looking around the gathering, a feeling of both fear and resolve washes over you. Do you raise your hand, a bold move that might draw unwanted attention? Or do you decide to work through this doubt on your own, trusting the process and the teachings you've already received? The Buddha might offer you personal guidance, perhaps asking you about your practice or a specific challenge you are facing, using a parable or a simple analogy to illuminate a complex concept, such as the interconnectedness of all things or the impermanence of pleasure. You learn about the Eightfold Path in more detail, understanding how each step contributes to the ultimate goal of liberation. A profound sense of relief and gratitude washes over you as his wisdom clarifies your confusion, and you feel seen and understood, fostering a deep emotional connection to him and his teachings. Yet you also feel the weight of responsibility to live up to this guidance. This direct interaction solidifies your confidence in the path and allows you to see the Buddha not just as a teacher, but as a compassionate guide who understands the intricacies of the human heart. You are walking with a larger group of monks along a dusty road, heading towards a new village where the Buddha has been invited to teach. And you notice that the Sangha, the community of disciples, has grown considerably since you first joined. The diversity of faces and the range of experiences represented within the group are striking, a testament to the growing influence of the teachings. The scent of sandalwood incense is now a more distant but still present memory from your meditation sessions. And the feel of rough robes is a uniform experience shared by all of you, a silent bond. As you approach a village, you see a conflict brewing between some of your fellow monks, a situation that requires careful handling. One monk, frustrated by the lack of understanding from a villager, has spoken sharply, his voice tinged with impatience. Another monk, perhaps newer to the discipline and less experienced in managing such interactions, has retaliated with a bitter remark, escalating the tension. You witness the increasing influence of the Buddha's teachings firsthand, as more people are drawn to him, offering alms and seeking his wisdom. And you also observe the challenges that come with growth, such as differing interpretations of the Dharma and occasional disagreements among disciples. Do you try to mediate the situation, speaking calming words to both monks and attempting to de-escalate the tension? Or do you rely on the established discipline of the Sangha to resolve the dispute, trusting that the community has its own ways of addressing such issues? You feel a growing sense of community and belonging, a powerful camaraderie forged through shared practice and hardship. But you also feel the weight of responsibility to uphold the ethical standards of the Sangha and to contribute to its harmony. Your understanding of your own role within a larger spiritual movement solidifies, and you are no longer just a seeker of personal enlightenment, but a participant in a transformative social and spiritual endeavor. You are sitting by your simple meditation mat, the scent of sandalwood incense a familiar comfort, as the sun sets, casting long shadows across the ground. You have been reflecting on a particular event from the day, a moment where you felt a strong sense of possessiveness over a small carved wooden bowl, a gift from a devout follower, and you recognize this feeling as attachment, a concept the Buddha has taught extensively. The feel of rough robes against your skin is a constant reminder of your monastic vows, and you taste the simple alms food you received earlier, a flavor that is often bland but sustains you. You know that true liberation requires letting go of such desires, and the question of how to do this weighs on your mind. Do you consciously try to release your attachment to the bowl, perhaps by placing it on a communal shelf where it is available to all? Or do you hold on to it, convincing yourself that it is a harmless possession and that you can manage your attachment internally without external action? This chapter focuses on your internal struggle to embody the teachings, and you might be presented with situations that test your adherence to the precepts of monastic life, such as a temptation to speak harshly or a desire for recognition. You actively practice mindfulness, observing your thoughts and emotions without judgment, and choosing to act in accordance with the Dharma, striving for a deeper understanding of the ultimate goal, nirvana, the cessation of suffering. You experience a profound sense of inner peace as you make the conscious choice to release your attachment, a bittersweet feeling of letting go that is outweighed by the liberation it brings, and you feel a deep sense of gratitude for the path and the teacher who illuminated it. You learn that non-attachment is not about indifference or lack of feeling, but about freedom from the craving and clinging that cause suffering. And you understand that it is a practice, not a final destination. Your journey as an ascetic seeking enlightenment has found its true beginning, as you have moved from seeking external answers to cultivating internal wisdom, beginning to internalize the teachings and make them your own. Your experience with the transformative process of spiritual awakening reveals the richness of ancient Indian philosophical traditions. You find yourself at the edge of a tranquil bamboo grove, a place of unexpected peace after the dusty roads. Sunlight filters through the tall, slender stalks, dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow that seem to move with a life of their own. The air here is noticeably cooler, fresher than the open plains, carrying the clean, green aroma of the bamboo itself. From your rough robes, a familiar sensation against your skin, you feel the day's warmth, but it's a gentler kind of warmth here, shaded and refreshing. You can hear the rustling of leaves, a soft, rhythmic whisper that seems to speak of quietude. Across the grove, you see a gathering of people, seated with quiet reverence on worn mats. At the center of this assembly is a figure radiating a profound calm, a stillness that draws you in. This is Siddhartha Gautama, the teacher you have traveled so far to find. The faint, sweet scent of sandalwood incense, a smell you've associated with sacred spaces for years, is stronger here, mingling with the green fragrance of the bamboo. It is a comforting aroma, yet as you observe the simple dignity of the seated figures, the rough texture of your own robes suddenly feels less like a symbol of your hard-won asceticism and more like a burden you've carried for too long. As you take a step closer, drawn by an invisible thread, you join the others, finding a spot on your own simple meditation mat, a worn piece of cloth that has been your bedroll and seat for countless nights. As you settle, a young monk, his face kind and his movements graceful, approaches you. He extends a simple wooden bowl, offering you a small portion of the alms food he has collected. This offering presents a choice. Do you accept this sustenance, acknowledging a need you have long denied in your quest for self-sufficiency? Or do you politely decline, clinging to your solitary resolve and the habits of your former path? After you settle onto your mat, the young monk moves away, and your attention turns to the figure at the center. Siddhartha Gautama begins to speak, his voice not loud or commanding, but gentle and clear, carrying effortlessly through the hushed grove. He speaks of suffering, a word that resonates deeply within you. He explains that it is not just physical pain, but a deep dissatisfaction, a sense of something missing that underlies all existence. He introduces the concept of the Four Noble Truths, a framework for understanding this suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path that leads to its end. You are struck by the directness and practicality of his words, a stark contrast to the complex, often abstract philosophies you have encountered on your solitary quest. A profound sense of stillness washes over you, a peace you haven't experienced even during your deepest meditations, those times when you pushed your body to its limits. There is also a quiet excitement, a feeling that you have finally arrived at a place of true learning, a place where the answers you seek might actually be found. Yet, beneath this burgeoning peace, a subtle current of apprehension runs. This path, you sense, requires a different kind of surrender, not a surrender of the body to hardship, but a surrender of the mind to a profound understanding. You begin to understand, then, that enlightenment isn't about achieving some extreme, unattainable state through self-mortification, but about understanding a fundamental aspect of life that affects everyone. By listening to the Buddha's clear, compassionate teaching, you witness the power of words that cut through confusion, offering a way forward that is not based on further struggle, but on deeper insight. This wisdom is a balm to your weary spirit. You are drawn into the Sangha, the community of disciples that gathers around the Buddha. The solitary ascetic who for so long has walked alone is now becoming part of something larger, even if tentatively. You feel a connection to these others, a shared journey that starts to weave you into a new kind of tapestry, one woven with shared understanding and a common purpose that transcends individual striving. As you sit there, absorbing the Buddha's words, you consider the path you've traveled. For years, you rigorously practiced self-denial, believing that by conquering your physical needs and desires, you could find truth. But that path led only to exhaustion and a deeper sense of frustration. You now recognize that the Buddha's approach isn't about denying life, but about understanding its true nature, including the suffering that seems inherent in it. You begin to understand the first noble truth, the truth of suffering itself. Does this suffering arise from our external circumstances or from our internal reactions to them? The Buddha continues, explaining the cause of suffering, craving, the insatiable desire for things to be different, to be more, to last forever. He speaks of attachment, the clinging to possessions, relationships, and even our own ideas, which invariably leads to disappointment when things change, as they inevitably do. Your own past, with its intense striving and eventual disillusionment, feels like a testament to this truth. You understand that your years of self-punishment were themselves a form of craving, a craving for spiritual attainment, for a state of being free from discomfort. He then moves to the cessation of suffering, the possibility of liberation. This isn't a distant, unattainable ideal, but a tangible reality that can be realized through understanding and practice. The Buddha speaks of a path, a way of living that leads out of this cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. This introduces the Noble Eightfold Path, a guide for living that encompasses right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. You begin to grasp that these are not separate commands, but interconnected elements of a way of life that fosters balance and inner peace. The gentle cadence of his voice, the clarity of his explanations, all speak to a profound wisdom that feels both ancient and utterly new. You realize that the peace you feel in this grove is not a fleeting sensation, but the first whisper of a deeper contentment, one that arises from understanding, not from struggle. The apprehension you felt earlier begins to recede, replaced by a growing sense of hope and a deep-seated curiosity about this path he has laid out. This encounter marks a significant turning point. The rigid boundaries of your solitary quest begin to soften, opening you to the possibility that true spiritual progress might be found not in isolation, but in community and in understanding the shared human experience of suffering. You are no longer just an ascetic seeking personal freedom. You are a student, beginning to learn from a teacher who offers not more discipline, but deeper insight into the nature of reality itself. You understand now why the gentle voice in the grove, explaining the fundamental nature of suffering and its cure, was the turning point from your solitary years of hardship to a path of communal learning and profound inner transformation. The morning air carries a crisp coolness as you walk through a small village, your empty alms bowl held before you. The rising sun begins to paint the eastern sky with soft hues of orange and pink, hinting at the warmth to come over the distant, winding path of the Ganges River. This practice of alms rounds, of receiving sustenance through the generosity of others, is still new to you, and a quiet, humbling experience each day. Your rough robes, once a symbol of your fierce independence, now feel like a shared garment, connecting you to the growing community of monks. The taste of the food you receive is usually simple: a handful of rice, some lentil stew, perhaps a few cooked vegetables, but it is always nourishing. As you hold your bowl, feeling its familiar weight, you are reminded of your dependence on the kindness of strangers and the unseen support of the community. The low murmur of the waking village surrounds you, the clatter of pots and the soft sound of greetings, a constant reminder of the lives unfolding around your silent progress. This daily rhythm of giving and receiving is becoming a deeply ingrained practice. As you approach one dwelling, a woman emerges. her face etched with a familiar sort of worry. She offers you a generous portion of food, her movements precise and practiced. But as she looks at you, her gaze seems to pierce beyond the rough cloth of your robes, as if she senses the inner struggle you've carried for so long. This quiet acknowledgement, this knowing look, prompts a question within you. Do you simply accept the alms with polite gratitude? Or do you feel a gentle urge to offer a brief word of blessing, a subtle hint at your own search for peace in return for her kindness? You watch as others in the village offer their food. Some do so with genuine warmth, their smiles open and their gestures quick. Others offer their contribution with a more resigned duty, their expressions suggesting they see this as a social obligation rather than an act of charity. It is during these moments that you truly see the Buddha himself, receiving alms with the same serene equanimity, whether it is offered from a wealthy merchant's well-laden table or a humble farmer's meager share. His calm demeanor in receiving such varied offerings is a profound lesson in itself. This practice, so different from your solitary days, forces you to confront ingrained feelings of pride and, at times, a surprising sense of shame. The act of begging, of holding out your bowl for sustenance, challenges your deeply held belief in self-reliance, a tenet of your former ascetic path. Yet, with each offering, and especially when you witness the Buddha's grace in accepting them, your perspective slowly begins to shift, fostering a growing acceptance and a less forceful approach to your own needs. It's a subtle but significant change in your inner landscape. You are learning that this practice of dana, the act of giving, is not just about the physical offering of food or goods, but also about cultivating generosity and strengthening the bonds within the community. This daily ritual also begins to illuminate the Buddha's teachings on non-attachment, showing you how even the most basic necessity, the food that sustains your life, can become a point of clinging if not approached with a balanced mind. The lesson here is not about rejecting sustenance, but about releasing the desire for specific kinds or quantities. The varied reactions of the villagers, from the openly kind to the reluctantly dutiful, also reveal the beginnings of a settled social dynamic within the Sangha, the community of disciples. You notice how more senior monks, those who have been with the Buddha longer, often receive more attention and respect from the villagers. This is not overtly divisive, but it is a noticeable difference in how offerings and interactions are handled, a quiet testament to the developing structure of the community. This experience of receiving alms is subtly transforming your understanding of dignity. It is moving away from the external measures of status or possessions that once defined it, and is instead beginning to root itself in a more internal sense of worth, a dignity derived from your commitment to the path rather than your outward appearance or social standing. Your journey through the simple act of receiving sustenance has shown you that true value lies not in what one possesses, but in how one lives and shares. Summary. This chapter introduces the practice of alms rounds, highlighting the reader's evolving relationship with dependence, community generosity, and the initial understanding of non-attachment through the act of receiving food. Your understanding of dignity has broadened, moving from external measures to a more internal sense of worth cultivated through the practice of receiving alms. You sit in a circle with other monks, the sun filtering through the tall bamboo stalks above, dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow. The air here is cooler, fresher than the dusty roads you often tread. Today's topic of discussion feels different, more probing, as the murmur of voices revolves around the nature of the self. A familiar urge stirs within you, a habit from your solitary days as an ascetic, the desire to assert your own learned opinions, to prove your intellectual prowess in these philosophical debates. The scent of sandalwood incense, a constant, grounding presence, mingles with the clean, green aroma of the bamboo. You feel the smooth, familiar surface of your meditation mat beneath you, a simple piece of cloth that has served as your bedroll and seat for years. The sounds of chanting, punctuated by the Buddha's gentle voice whenever a discussion becomes too sharp, create a unique rhythm to your days. Around you, you see the earnest faces of your fellow monks. Some are younger, their eagerness a palpable energy, while others are older, their expressions set with years of contemplation. A learned monk who has spent many years studying ancient texts presents a complex argument about the permanent nature of the soul, a concept you yourself once held dear. He challenges the Buddha's teachings on impermanence, his words echoing with the weight of tradition and scripture. As he concludes, a stillness falls over the gathering, and all eyes turn towards the Buddha. The learned monk's words, though eloquently spoken, seem to create a subtle tension in the otherwise peaceful grove. Considering this argument, a critical question arises for you. Do you remain silent, a quiet observer of this intellectual exchange, allowing the Buddha to respond directly? Or do you cautiously voice your own developing understanding, seeking clarification from the teacher himself on this deeply debated point? This moment feels like a test of your commitment to the new path, a crossroads where your old ways of thinking still tug at you, urging you towards intellectual assertion. The discussions here are not merely intellectual exercises. They are earnest attempts to grasp profound truths, and you find yourself caught between your past beliefs and the Buddha's unfolding wisdom. When the Buddha intervenes, as he does now, he doesn't declare one monk right and another wrong. Instead, he guides the conversation with infinite patience, gently pointing out the subtle clinging to concepts that perpetuate suffering, a pattern you recognize in your own past practices. He then introduces the concept of anatta, which translates to no self. This teaching proposes that there is no permanent, unchanging self or soul, a notion that directly contradicts much of your prior understanding of existence. You experience a mixture of intellectual stimulation and profound confusion as these ideas are presented, feeling a disquietude deep within your being. This idea of no self is profoundly unsettling, directly challenging the core of what you believed defined you. You find yourself grappling with doubt. Is this teacher leading you astray with such radical ideas? Or is your own mind, accustomed to the comfort of fixed beliefs, simply resisting a truth too vast to fully comprehend in your current state of understanding. The learned monk's words, though challenged, still resonate with a familiar certainty. Consequently, you are beginning to learn the art of intellectual humility, recognizing the significant difference between accumulating knowledge and truly achieving wisdom through understanding. This is a crucial lesson, as you see how attachment to ideas, much like attachment to material things you once renounced, can also be a powerful force that perpetuates suffering. Your previous certainty, once a source of strength, now feels like a barrier. This process leads to a significant shift in your perspective, and your intellectual pride, a remnant of your days as a rigorous ascetic, is being challenged by these new teachings. You begin to understand that true understanding doesn't come from winning arguments or holding rigidly to established doctrines, but rather from opening your mind to new perspectives and letting go of the need to define and control. This realization is both liberating and humbling. Building upon this foundation of questioning, you start to see the Buddha not just as a dispenser of doctrines, but as a guide who encourages deep personal inquiry. His method is to foster an environment where such profound questions can be explored without judgment, allowing each individual to grapple with the implications of anatta and its place within the Four Noble Truths. This creates a different kind of learning, one rooted in experience rather than rote memorization. Meanwhile, across the grove, the other monks are also engaged in their own internal dialogues, their faces reflecting a similar mix of contemplation and occasional confusion as they process these complex ideas. The collective energy of the group, united in their pursuit of understanding, creates a subtle but powerful atmosphere, a testament to the shared journey of seeking liberation from suffering. This shared effort makes your own doubts feel less isolating. This interaction has further solidified your understanding of how attachment to concepts, even those seemingly related to spiritual truth, can obscure the path to true liberation. Your journey from a solitary ascetic to a member of the Sangha has revealed that the most profound transformations often begin with a willingness to question your most deeply held beliefs and to embrace a wisdom that transcends intellectual grasp. You have lived through philosophical debates that challenged your very sense of self, a pivotal moment in your journey towards enlightenment. You sit in the quiet solitude of the bamboo grove, the rustling leaves a familiar song. Yet today, the usual peace is disturbed by a flicker of memory, a face from your past, the comfort of familiar surroundings, the taste of a meal you once enjoyed. These thoughts are like sharp thorns pricking at your newfound calm. The scent of sandalwood incense, usually a comforting anchor, now feels like it's struggling against an internal turbulence, reminding you of the commitment you've made. Your rough robes, a constant reminder of your monastic vows, suddenly feel less like a chosen identity and more like a separation from the life you once knew. Across the area, you hear the distant sounds of villagers' laughter, which, instead of being neutral, now seems to highlight the simple pleasures you've left behind, stirring a subtle longing. Because of this internal unrest, a former associate from your ascetic days has sought you out, having heard of your joining the Sangha, the community of disciples. He stands just outside the grove, looking somewhat bewildered, but eager to speak. A living embodiment of the life you once lived and the path you walked. This encounter presents a clear choice. Do you meet with him, perhaps to explain your new path and seek understanding? Or do you firmly decline, knowing that such an interaction might reawaken dormant attachments that you've worked so hard to overcome? The past, with its familiar routines and comfort, exerts a strong pull, a temptation to retreat from the challenges of this new way. This is not the only subtle pull you felt. You might encounter other temptations, not necessarily grand schemes of worldly pleasure, but the quiet, insistent whisper of old habits, desires, and attachments. This could involve seeing a woman whose beauty momentarily catches your eye, or hearing music that stirs emotions long thought subdued, causing a ripple of unease. Because of these subtle shifts in your inner landscape, the Buddha's teachings on the Eightfold Path, a guide to right understanding, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, become your constant reference point. You strive to practice right thought and right action in these moments of vulnerability, trying to navigate the path with intention. The emotional journey you are experiencing is complex. You feel a strong pull towards the past, a genuine sense of longing for what was familiar and comfortable, which makes this present path seem even more austere. Doubt, that old companion, resurfaces with renewed vigor. Was your old life really so bad, so inherently flawed? Or is this new path simply too alienating, too demanding for your spirit? Consequently, you must actively choose to stay present and focused on the teachings, resisting the urge to wander back into the well-trodden paths of your former existence. These internal battles are as significant as any external challenge. You learn through this internal struggle that renunciation isn't about erasing your past or pretending it never happened. Rather, it is about transforming your relationship with it, understanding its lessons without allowing it to define your present. You realize with growing clarity that clinging to pleasant memories or past experiences, even those that brought joy, is a subtle but potent form of attachment that obstructs progress on the path to liberation. Therefore, letting go of the past's grip becomes a crucial step in your spiritual development, allowing you to move forward with a clearer mind and a lighter heart. You recall a moment earlier today, a simple act that highlighted this internal shift. As you were receiving alms, a small carved wooden bowl, a gift from a devout follower who had heard you speak, was placed in your hands. A strange feeling of possessiveness arose, a desire to keep this item solely for yourself, a tangible representation of someone's kindness towards you. This feeling, however, was quickly recognized as attachment, a concept the Buddha has taught extensively as a root cause of suffering. True liberation, you understand, requires letting go of such desires, even for something as seemingly innocuous as a small bowl. This realization leads you to a decision point regarding the bowl. You know that true freedom from suffering comes from detaching yourself from possessions, even those that hold sentimental value. Do you consciously try to release your attachment to the bowl, perhaps by placing it on a communal shelf where it can be used by any monk in need? Or do you hold on to it, convincing yourself that it's a harmless possession and that you can manage your attachment internally? The choice here is not about rejecting the gift, but about understanding the nature of your own mind and its tendency to cling, a fundamental lesson in the Buddha's teachings. You see your former associate waiting patiently outside the grove, his presence a vivid reminder of the life you've left behind. He represents the familiar, the comfortable, the easily understood. Meeting him might provide a chance to explain your transformation, to bridge the gap between your past and present. However, the risk is significant. Such an encounter could easily reawaken dormant attachments, tugging at the threads of your commitment and leading you back towards the very things you are trying to transcend. Therefore, you choose to remain within the grove, deepening your resolve. This internal struggle, this wrestling with memories and temptations, is a crucial part of the learning process. You might encounter other subtle challenges throughout the day. A tempting thought to speak sharply when someone misunderstands your intentions, or a fleeting desire for recognition for your progress. Because of these internal nudges, you actively practice mindfulness, observing your thoughts and emotions without judgment, and choosing to act in accordance with the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings. This conscious effort to align your actions with your understanding is central to your transformation. Indeed, the teachings on the Eightfold Path are not just abstract concepts. They are practical guidelines for navigating these moments. Right understanding means seeing things as they truly are, free from delusion. Right thought involves cultivating a mind free from ill will and cruelty. Right speech means refraining from lying, harsh words, slander, and idle chatter. Right action means abstaining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Right livelihood involves earning a living in a way that does not harm others. Right effort is about preventing evil, abandoning evil, generating good, and maintaining good. Right mindfulness is about being fully aware of your body, feelings, mind, and mental objects. And right concentration is about developing focused awareness. You remember a particularly amusing moment from earlier today. During alms rounds, a young boy, no older than 7, offered you a single, slightly bruised mango. As you accepted it with a bow, he proudly declared, "This is for your journey to the other side." You couldn't help but smile, realizing his innocent offering was a pure expression of generosity, even if his understanding of your destination was a bit off. This moment, simple yet profound, reinforced the idea that pure intentions carry their own inherent value. Meanwhile, across the region, a significant scholarly debate continues among those who study the Buddha's teachings. Some scholars argue that the concept of anatta, or no self, implies a complete negation of personal identity, suggesting that individuals are merely aggregates of constantly changing phenomena. Others propose a more nuanced interpretation, viewing anatta not as annihilation, but as the absence of a fixed, permanent, independent self, allowing for a continuity of consciousness that is not identical to the self. Your own experience of letting go of past attachments seems to align with the latter, suggesting a path where identity can transform rather than disappear entirely. The pull of the past is strong, but so is the growing understanding of the present. You realize that temptation is not an external force designed to trip you up, but rather an internal reaction, a product of your own mind's conditioning and its ingrained habits. Therefore, your journey is not about avoiding the world or its distractions, but about learning to navigate them with a clear and untroubled mind. By observing these inner reactions, you begin to understand the nature of attachment and its role in perpetuating suffering. Your solitary meditation session is interrupted by the rustling of leaves, and you look up to see your former associate standing at the edge of the grove, his expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. He represents the life you left behind, a life of rigors that ultimately brought little peace. The question of meeting him looms large. Do you step forward and engage, seeking to articulate your new understanding? Or do you remain seated, focusing on the internal work of detachment? The choice you make will reveal much about the strength of your commitment. By choosing to remain within the quiet solitude of the grove, you have taken a significant step in transforming your relationship with the past. Your role in these circumstances as a seeker dedicated to understanding and practicing the Buddha's teachings proves your growing capacity to navigate the subtle challenges of spiritual growth. The familiar scent of sandalwood incense, a gentle fragrance that has become a touchstone for your newfound peace, drifts through the bamboo grove. You sit with a small group of disciples, a more intimate gathering than you've grown accustomed to. Today, the usual rustling of leaves seems to hold a hushed expectancy, as if the very grove anticipates a word of profound wisdom. You feel a quiet hum of anticipation within yourself, a subtle vibration that suggests the Buddha might turn his gaze towards you, perhaps addressing a specific question that has been lingering in your mind, a seed of doubt that has resisted your usual methods of cultivation. The rough texture of your robes, once a symbol of your ascetic rigors, now feels like a chosen garment, a declaration of your commitment to this path. You look at the Buddha, his serene presence a beacon amidst the dappled sunlight filtering through the towering bamboo stalks. His alms bowl, a simple vessel of earth, sits near him, a silent testament to the practice of receiving what is freely given, a profound teaching in itself. The air around him seems still, a pool of tranquility in the gentle movement of the grove, drawing you further into a state of attentive listening. For days, a specific contemplation on suffering has been replaying in your mind, a question about its root that remains just beyond your grasp, even after discussions with your fellow monks. It touches upon the very nature of existence, a delicate knot that you have yet to untangle. As the Buddha pauses his gentle discourse, His gaze sweeps across the assembled faces, a quiet awareness that seems to see into each heart. In this moment, a decision forms within you, a quiet resolve born from your years of seeking. Do you raise your hand, a bold gesture that might draw all eyes and perhaps a measure of discomfort, to voice this persistent question? Or, in keeping with the quiet strength you've cultivated, do you decide to continue wrestling with this doubt on your own, trusting that the insights will eventually blossom from within your own diligent practice? This choice feels significant, a crossroads in your understanding. Meanwhile, the Buddha's attention shifts, and he begins to speak directly to you, his voice like a calm stream flowing over smooth stones. He inquires about your practice, not with judgment, but with a genuine curiosity that eases the apprehension you felt moments before. You find yourself explaining the nuance of your contemplation, the subtle complexities that have eluded your own understanding. He listens intently, his stillness a powerful encouragement. Then he offers a simple parable, a story about a gardener tending to a wilting plant. He explains that the wilting isn't caused by a single harsh wind, but by a multitude of subtle factors: insufficient water, poor soil, lack of sunlight. This, he gently explains, is like suffering. It arises not from one singular event, but from a complex web of causes and conditions, a concept that resonates deeply with your own internal struggle. He elaborates on the Eightfold Path, detailing how each step, right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, works in harmony to unravel these complex causes, leading ultimately towards liberation from suffering. He elaborates on the Eightfold Path, detailing how each step, right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, works in harmony to unravel these complex causes, leading ultimately towards liberation from suffering. A profound sense of relief washes over you as his words illuminate the shadowed corners of your contemplation. The confusion that had clung to you like damp earth begins to dissipate, replaced by a clear understanding. You feel seen, your internal journey acknowledged, and this fosters a deep connection to the Buddha and his teachings, a bond that feels more profound than any intellectual agreement. Yet, alongside this gratitude, there is a growing awareness of the responsibility that comes with such clear guidance. This interaction teaches you that seeking help, even for the most personal of quandaries, is not a sign of weakness, but a vital component of growth. You gain direct insight into the Buddha's teaching method, realizing that his wisdom is not delivered in monolithic pronouncements, but carefully shaped to address the unique needs and questions of each seeker, like a skilled physician diagnosing a specific ailment. Your confidence in this path, which had sometimes wavered under the weight of your former rigors, is now bolstered by this direct, compassionate guidance. You see the Buddha not merely as a teacher of profound philosophies, but as a gentle guide, one who understands the intricate workings of the human heart and mind, and who offers a clear, actionable path towards peace. This personal connection strengthens your resolve, solidifying your commitment to the teachings and to the community that now surrounds you, making the journey feel less like a solitary quest and more like a shared pilgrimage towards truth. You feel the weight of this newfound clarity on your shoulders, a gentle reminder of the path ahead. This chapter reveals the personal and direct nature of the Buddha's teachings, showcasing his ability to address individual struggles with compassion and clarity, and further solidifying your understanding of the Eightfold Path through a specific example. Your personal understanding of suffering is clarified through direct guidance from the Buddha, strengthening your faith in his teachings and the Eightfold Path as a practical means to liberation. You walk with a growing number of monks along a path worn smooth by countless feet. The sun, as it rises, casts a gentle warmth, coaxing dew from the leaves overhead, and this warmth prompts you to adjust your worn robes. A vast assembly of men, each clad in similar rough cloth, accompanies the Buddha, and you note the varied faces in this expanding community. Some are weathered from years of wandering, others are young and eager, reflecting a wide spectrum of life experiences brought together by the teacher's message. The familiar, comforting scent of sandalwood incense, though now fainter than in the quiet grove, still clings to your meditation cloth, a reminder of your shared journey. And the soft murmur of chanting drifts from the group, a rhythmic sound that has become as familiar to you as your own breath. This increase in numbers has brought a new energy, a sense of momentum that sweeps you along. You find yourself looking forward to reaching the next village, not just for the alms, but for the chance to see how the teachings are taking root in the wider world. The Buddha himself walks with a steady pace, his presence a beacon of calm amidst the shuffling feet and quiet conversations. And you feel a deeper connection to these men, a camaraderie born from shared practice and the common pursuit of understanding. This feeling of belonging is a gentle balm, soothing the persistent echoes of your solitary ascetic days. As you draw closer to a cluster of dwellings, the sounds of the village begin to filter through the murmuring monks. Suddenly, a sharp, heated exchange erupts from a small knot of your brothers ahead. One monk, his voice tight with frustration, has clearly taken offense at something a villager said, and his response is not one of patient explanation, but of sharp words. Another monk, perhaps newer to the discipline and less practiced in controlling his reactions, replies with a bitter remark, escalating the tension. This sudden discord amongst your fellow disciples halts your forward progress. You observe this conflict, feeling a familiar pang of unease. You recall the Buddha's teachings on right speech, emphasizing kindness and the avoidance of harsh or divisive words. The sharp words exchanged between the monks are a jarring contrast to the peace you've come to associate with the Sangha. And this disagreement highlights the challenges of living together, even in pursuit of a noble goal. It is a stark reminder that even within the community, the old habits of the mind can resurface, like weeds pushing through newly planted ground. A question forms in your mind. What is your role in this moment? Do you step forward, offering your own calming presence and words of understanding to both the offended monk and the one who responded with bitterness? Or perhaps is it wiser to allow the established discipline and the inherent wisdom of the Sangha to address this matter, trusting that the community will find its own balance? This decision feels significant, a small test of your own commitment to fostering harmony. You decide to approach the disputing monks. Moving past the others, you gently place a hand on each of their shoulders, your touch a silent invitation to pause. You speak softly, reminding them of the Buddha's emphasis on patience and understanding, noting that the villager might not have intended offense and that their own reactions might have been heightened by the rigors of the journey. You suggest that by speaking with kindness and seeking clarification, they can transform this potential conflict into an opportunity for teaching and compassion. Witnessing the Buddha's growing influence is remarkable. Everywhere you go, people are drawn to his wisdom, offering alms with eager hands and seeking his guidance with hopeful eyes. However, this expansion also brings its own set of challenges, as you've just seen. Differing interpretations of the Dharma, occasional disagreements among disciples, and the necessity for clearer rules and structures within the Sangha become increasingly apparent. These are the growing pains of a movement, and you feel a part of that unfolding history. You continue walking, the earlier conflict now a quiet lesson in the complexities of community life. The camaraderie you feel with the other monks is powerful, a bond forged through shared practice and the common pursuit of liberation. And this sense of belonging is growing stronger with each passing day. Yet, this growing connection also brings with it a sense of responsibility, a commitment to uphold the ethical standards of the Sangha and to actively contribute to its harmony. This experience has deepened your understanding of how individual actions ripple through the entire group. You learn that building a community is not a passive process, but requires constant, patient effort, mutual understanding, and active participation from everyone involved. The way you and your fellow monks handled that brief disagreement, transforming a potential moment of discord into an opportunity for practice, demonstrated the practical application of the teachings in everyday life, showing how deeply individual choices can impact the collective well-being. Your understanding of your own place within this larger spiritual endeavor solidifies. You are no longer solely focused on your own personal enlightenment, the solitary quest that defined your past. Instead, you see yourself as an active participant in a transformative social and spiritual movement, a single thread woven into a much larger tapestry. This realization brings a profound sense of purpose, connecting you to something far greater than yourself. Your participation in the evolving life of the Sangha has been transformative. You settle onto your worn meditation mat, the rough fibers of familiar feeling against your skin. The sun dips towards the horizon, painting the sky with muted oranges and soft purples. A lingering scent of sandalwood incense carried from your morning chants still comforts your senses, a gentle reminder of the peaceful grove. Your mind, however, is less peaceful, replaying a small incident from the afternoon. You had been holding a small, intricately carved wooden bowl, a recent gift from a devout villager, and a surprising possessiveness had bloomed within you. The smooth wood felt solid and real in your hands, and for a moment a fierce desire to keep it entirely to yourself, to not share it or even let it be seen, had taken root. This unexpected surge of wanting felt like a sharp stone in the smooth fabric of your practice. You recall the Buddha's teachings on attachment, how the craving for things, even simple things like this bowl, creates a cycle of dissatisfaction and suffering. He explained that true liberation wasn't about hoarding pleasant experiences, but about freeing yourself from the need to possess them. You understand that holding on to this bowl with such tightness contradicts the very path you are trying to walk, the path towards freedom from the endless wanting that has defined so much of your life. The rough weave of your robes, a symbol of your commitment to a simpler existence, suddenly feels less like a constraint and more like a choice you are actively making. The taste of the alms food from earlier, plain rice and a few lentils, lingers on your tongue, nourishing but unexciting, a constant lesson in appreciating what is provided without demanding more. As the sounds of evening chants drift from the main hall, a question forms in your mind. Is this yearning for the bowl a true obstacle, or simply a natural human feeling that can be managed with a bit of discipline? This feeling of possessiveness, this clinging to a simple object, makes you pause and consider the nature of your own mind. You can feel the subtle pull to justify keeping the bowl close, to tell yourself that it's a harmless treasure, a small comfort that doesn't truly impede your spiritual progress. However, you also recall the Buddha's insistence on honesty with oneself, the importance of seeing things as they truly are, without self-deception. This internal debate mirrors the many philosophical discussions you've had with the other monks. You are presented with a clear choice now, a moment to actively practice what you've been taught. Do you consciously decide to release this attachment, perhaps by placing the bowl on the communal shelf where it can be appreciated by others? Or do you allow yourself to keep it, a private possession that you promise yourself to manage internally? This decision, seemingly small, feels significant, a test of your resolve and your understanding of the profound path you are walking. The Buddha himself has often emphasized that the path to enlightenment is paved with small, deliberate actions, each one a step away from the patterns that bind us. You remember him speaking of right intention and right action, how even the smallest desire, when nurtured, can grow into a significant hindrance. The temptation to rationalize keeping the bowl is strong, a whisper of self-preservation that echoes the old habits of your former life as a solitary ascetic, where self-reliance was paramount. Yet, the peace that settles over you when you simply observe your own mind without judgment is a more potent force. You recall the Buddha's gentle guidance on moments of temptation, how he encouraged his disciples to witness their desires without acting on them, like watching clouds drift across the sky. This approach offers a way to understand your own mind's workings without being controlled by them, a powerful distinction from the self-punishment that once defined your quest. The sounds of chanting continue, a steady rhythm that helps to anchor you in the present moment. You can see the rough texture of your robes, a constant reminder of your vows and the community you are part of. This practice of non-attachment isn't about becoming cold or indifferent. It is about freeing yourself from the constant craving and clinging that cause so much pain and dissatisfaction in life. It's about recognizing that true happiness doesn't come from what you own, but from what you are willing to let go of. The Buddha's teachings on the Eightfold Path offer a comprehensive guide for navigating these internal landscapes. Each step, from right understanding to right concentration, provides a framework for cultivating wisdom and compassion. This moment with the bowl is a practical application of that wisdom, a chance to embody the teachings rather than just intellectually grasp them. You feel a sense of gratitude for this opportunity to refine your practice. You understand that this practice of letting go is not a single event, but a continuous journey, a lifelong cultivation of awareness and freedom. The inner peace that arises from making a conscious choice to release attachment is a reward in itself, a subtle but profound liberation from the grip of possessiveness. This feeling of peace outweighs the slight regret of letting go of a beautiful object. The journey from a solitary seeker focused solely on personal austerity to a member of a growing community dedicated to shared wisdom has been transformative. You have moved from seeking external answers to cultivating an internal wellspring of understanding, learning to discern the true nature of your desires and how they contribute to suffering or liberation. You have begun to internalize these profound teachings, making them your own. The setting sun casts long shadows across the grove, signaling the end of another day. You feel a deep sense of peace, not from the external circumstances, but from within. This peace comes from the conscious act of choosing freedom over possession, understanding over attachment. You have become part of a legacy of awakening, a tradition of wisdom that continues to guide countless others toward peace. The scent of sandalwood incense, usually a gentle whisper in the quiet air of the bamboo grove, today felt like a heavy blanket pressing down with the unspoken weight of discord. You sat cross-legged on your worn mat, the familiar rough weave of your robes a comfort against your skin. Around you, the faces of your fellow monks were a tapestry of unease, their usual serene expressions replaced by furrowed brows and averted gazes, while hushed, anxious murmurs vibrated through the leaves above, a stark contrast to the usual calm. Esteemed Buddha, a monk whose wisdom had been a beacon for many, including yourself, stood before the Buddha, his presence usually a source of steady guidance. Ananda was not a man of rash pronouncements. His words, when they came, were usually measured, like the slow, deliberate flow of a deep river. But today, his voice, though still soft, carried a tremor that was entirely new, signaling a significant shift. "Esteemed Buddha," Ananda began, his gaze steady, his hands clasped before him, "I have meditated deeply on your teachings of impermanence, of the absence of a fixed self. And while I honor your insights, I find myself wrestling with a question that gnaws at my peace, a persistent unease that I cannot simply dismiss." A ripple of expectation, laced with apprehension, passed through the gathered monks, and you felt a prickle of unease yourself, recognizing the gravity of Ananda's words. Ananda was one of the Buddha's most senior disciples, respected for his long years of ascetic practice even before finding the Dhamma, and his doubts, if they were indeed doubts, could sway many, creating a ripple effect throughout the community. "You speak of the dissolution of the self," Ananda continued, his voice gaining a touch more volume, "that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. Yet when I observe the world, when I see the suffering of beings, when I feel the pain of loss, does not this very experience, this suffering, imply a self that suffers? If there is no I to experience pain, then who is it that we seek to liberate from this cycle?" He paused, and the silence that followed was profound. The rustling of the bamboo seeming to hold its breath, amplifying the intensity of his question. You looked towards the Buddha, whose expression remained one of serene attentiveness, offering no immediate response, allowing Ananda's words to settle and be examined by each listener, encouraging personal contemplation. You remembered your own journey, the years of self-mortification, the desperate attempts to find a solid, unchanging core within yourself, only to find emptiness and frustration, which made the Buddha's teaching of anatta, no self, a profound revelation and a release from that exhausting pursuit. But now, Ananda's question echoed a faint, unsettling resonance within you, making you wonder if, in seeking freedom from a fixed self, you had simply traded one illusion for another, a common pitfall in spiritual seeking. A younger monk, Bhikkhu Rahula, spoke up, his voice earnest and filled with the fresh understanding of recent teachings. "But, Elder Ananda," he said, "the Buddha has taught that suffering arises from craving and attachment, and these are rooted in the illusion of a self that desires and clings. When these attachments are released, the suffering ceases, as the Buddha himself has demonstrated through his own practice." Ananda turned his gaze, not unkindly, towards Rahula, acknowledging the younger monk's point with a gentle inclination of his head. "Indeed, young Rahula," he replied, "and I have striven to release these attachments with all my heart. Yet the very act of striving, the very awareness of my own efforts to let go, implies a me who is striving, a self that is actively engaged in this process. Where does this I truly reside, if not in the very fabric of our experience, in the very awareness that is observing?" The discussion continued, a delicate dance between clinging to familiar notions of self and the radical deconstruction offered by the Dhamma, and you found yourself drawn in to the intellectual currents, your mind, trained in years of philosophical inquiry as a former ascetic, analyzing each argument with keen interest. You saw some monks nodding in agreement with Ananda, their faces etched with a similar struggle, while others looked confused, their faith momentarily shaken by the elder monk's profound questioning. You felt a pang of something akin to fear as you contemplated the implications. If a monk as learned and devoted as Ananda could question the core teachings, what did it mean for the rest of you who were still learning? Was this a test of faith, or a sign of a potential flaw in the path itself? A question that had plagued many seekers throughout history, leading to various interpretations and even schisms within philosophical schools. The Buddha finally spoke, his voice a calm, clear stream that cut through the rising tide of confusion, a sound that always brought a sense of reassurance. Ananda, he said, his tone gentle and inviting, you ask a question that has troubled many seeking the truth, and it is a question that requires deep examination, not a simple answer. You speak of the I that suffers, the me that strives, but let us examine this I more closely with the clear light of understanding. He then picked up a small, smooth stone from the ground, a simple object that served as a powerful teaching tool. This stone, he said, holding it up for all to see, appears to be a single, solid entity, a unified whole. But is it not, in truth, composed of countless particles, elements, and forces interacting with each other? Does it have an enduring, independent existence? Or is it merely a temporary aggregation, a confluence of causes and conditions? He let the stone drop, and it broke into several smaller pieces, demonstrating its inherent impermanence. Even this stone, which seems so permanent and solid, is subject to change, to disintegration, to becoming something else entirely, he continued, his gaze sweeping over the assembled monks. And so it is with all phenomena, including what we call the self. There is no permanent, unchanging I to be found, no core essence that remains constant through all experiences. What we experience as a self is a process, a continuous flow of interconnected causes and effects, a bundle of changing perceptions, feelings, thoughts, and volitions, all in constant flux. He looked directly at Ananda, his gaze filled with profound compassion and understanding. The suffering you perceive arises not from a self that exists independently, but from our mistaken belief in such a self, our clinging to this impermanent process as if it were a solid, unchanging entity, the Buddha explained. When this illusion is recognized, when we see that there is no inherent I to be protected, to be gratified, to be harmed, then the craving, the attachment, and the suffering begin to dissolve naturally. It is not that the suffering disappears because the self is liberated. Rather, the suffering ceases because the illusion of a separate, enduring self is seen through, like mist burning off in the morning sun. You listened intently, the Buddha's analogy resonating deeply within you, offering a fresh perspective on a concept that had previously seemed so abstract and challenging to grasp fully. He wasn't dismissing Ananda's confusion, but skillfully guiding him and all of you, towards a more profound understanding of the Dhamma, reminding you that the teachings were not a set of rigid dogma, but a path of investigation and dismantling illusions, a truth that had always been central to your own seeker's path. However, even as the intellectual storm of doubt began to subside, another kind of tempest was brewing outside the quiet sanctuary of the grove, an external force that would soon demand immediate attention. The gentle breeze that had carried the Buddha's words suddenly turned cold and fierce, a dramatic shift in the environment that signaled an impending change. The sky, which had been a soft blue, darkened with alarming speed, the transition from light to gloom occurring with a startling abruptness that made you instinctively look up. The rustling of the bamboo, which had been a soft whisper accompanying the discussion, transformed into a violent thrashing as the leaves tore and whipped against each other with increasing ferocity, a powerful visual representation of the natural forces at play. Then the sound began, a low rumble that quickly escalated into a deafening roar, a primal sound that seemed to shake the very earth beneath you. The ground beneath you vibrated, a tangible tremor that announced the approaching storm, and rain, not in gentle drops, but in furious sheets, began to lash down, a deluge unlike any you had experienced before. "The river!" someone shouted, their voice barely audible above the din of the wind and the crashing water, a cry of immediate alarm that focused everyone's attention. You saw the Buddha remain seated, his composure unshakable, a pillar of calm amidst the rising chaos. But the younger monks began to stir, their faces now reflecting genuine alarm and a dawning realization of the danger they were in. The bamboo grove, your sanctuary and place of learning, was rapidly becoming a place of danger as the water rose with alarming speed, swirling with debris and threatening to engulf everything. Your ascetic life had taught you to endure hardship and to find equanimity in difficult circumstances. But this was different. This was not a chosen austerity, but an overwhelming force of nature, indifferent and immensely powerful, and it required a different kind of response. You looked at the faces around you and saw that some were frozen in fear, their bodies tense and their eyes wide, while others, their eyes fixed on the Buddha, seemed to draw strength and resolve from his unwavering presence, finding an anchor in his serene demeanor. "We must seek higher ground," you heard yourself say, the words coming out with a surprising steadiness, the immediate need for action overriding any personal apprehension you might have felt. You realized that the fear was not entirely gone, but it was tempered by a sense of duty and a profound need to act, to help protect yourself and those around you from the encroaching danger. The Buddha nodded, his silent acknowledgement a confirmation of the urgency. "Indeed," he said, his voice calm and clear, "the elements are powerful, and we must be prepared. But even in their fury, we can find our practice. We can find our purpose. We must help one another, and we must offer what comfort and assistance we can to those in the villages who will be most affected by this sudden onslaught." He rose, and the gathered monks followed suit, moving with a newfound urgency as the reality of the situation became starkly clear. The peaceful discourse on the self had been abruptly interrupted by a stark, immediate crisis, and the teachings on impermanence and non-attachment suddenly took on a visceral urgency, transforming from philosophical concepts into practical guides for survival and compassion. As you moved out of the grove, the force of the wind and rain pushed against you, making each step a struggle against the elements. You saw that the small hamlets that dotted the landscape were already beginning to flood, the water rising with terrifying speed, and the houses, built of simple materials, were vulnerable to its destructive power. The villagers, whom you had observed with detached curiosity and intellectual interest, were now in desperate need of help, their lives and livelihoods threatened by the rising waters. You joined a group of monks who were already moving towards the nearest village, their purpose clear and their resolve evident. The water was waist-deep in places, carrying branches and other flotsam, and the air was filled with the harsh mix of sounds, the roaring of the wind, the crashing of water, and the cries of people in distress, a symphony of natural power and human vulnerability. The scent of sandalwood incense, once a comforting anchor, was now completely overwhelmed by the sharp, earthy smell of wet earth and churning water. Your rough robes, usually a symbol of your chosen renunciation and a mark of your devotion, now felt like a shared identity, a sign that you were part of this community, united in your purpose to help and serve others in their time of need. You saw a woman struggling to pull a child out of a flooded dwelling, her efforts clearly strained by the rising water and the weight of the child. And without a second thought, you waded towards her, offering your arm for support, a silent testament to the compassion that the Buddha's teachings had instilled in you. The child, a small girl, was crying, her eyes wide with terror, a mirror of the fear that was palpable in the air, and you knew you had to act quickly. "Hold on," you said, your voice firm and reassuring, projecting a confidence you hoped you truly felt. "We will help you," you added, offering a promise of aid that brought a flicker of relief to the woman's face. And as you pulled her towards a slightly higher point, you felt the chilling embrace of the water against your skin and the rough texture of her sodden clothes against your hands, a direct, visceral connection to her plight. This was not a comfortable meditation or a philosophical exercise. This was a direct engagement with suffering, not as a theoretical concept, but as a palpable, urgent reality that demanded immediate action and unwavering presence. You worked alongside your fellow monks, their efforts mirrored by your own, and even some villagers who had managed to find higher ground, their own resilience and community spirit evident. There was no time for philosophical debate or introspection. The Four Noble Truths were not being discussed, but were being lived out in every action. Suffering was all around you, in the frightened cries of children, the desolation of flooded homes, and the fear etched in people's eyes. a stark reminder of the impermanent nature of all things, including the stability of their lives. The Buddha's teachings on the path to the cessation of suffering, the Eightfold Path, were not abstract principles, but immediate actions, right effort in helping others, right speech in offering words of comfort, right action in assisting with rescue and relief. You saw the Buddha himself, not directing from afar or observing from a safe distance, but wading through the rising waters, his serene presence a beacon of calm amidst the chaos and a powerful example of compassionate action. He was helping to lift a heavy beam that had fallen, blocking an escape route for a family trapped in their home, his actions speaking louder than any words and embodying the very essence of his teachings. His unwavering dedication to alleviating suffering, even in the face of overwhelming natural forces, was a profound lesson in how to live the Dhamma. As you and the other monks helped guide families to safety, you realized something profound that connected the intellectual and the experiential aspects of your journey. The doubt that Elder Ananda had expressed, the question about the I and suffering, was not a sign of weakness or a flaw in the teachings, but a call for deeper understanding and a more nuanced inquiry into the nature of existence. And in this moment of crisis, that deeper understanding was being forged not through abstract intellectual debate, but through direct, embodied experience, a truth that resonated deeply with your own past struggles as an ascetic. The illusion of a separate self was challenged not by abstract reasoning, but by the tangible reality of shared vulnerability and the urgent, undeniable need for mutual aid, a powerful demonstration of interconnectedness. You helped an elderly man, his face a mask of weariness and loss, to higher ground, his slow, deliberate movements a testament to his age and the ordeal he had endured. He looked at you, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude for your assistance and despair at the devastation he had witnessed, and murmured, his voice raspy and filled with sorrow, "Everything is gone." You didn't have a grand philosophical answer or a comforting platitude ready, but instead you offered the simplest of truths, drawn from your recent experiences and the powerful lessons of the day. "Not everything," you replied, your voice steady and filled with a newfound conviction. "We are here. We can rebuild. We have each other," you added, offering not just words of comfort, but a tangible sense of hope and the profound strength of community. You felt a sense of purpose, a quiet strength that transcended your years of solitary asceticism and the intellectual wrestling you had engaged in earlier. The communal effort, the shared struggle against the elements, was creating a new kind of bond, a tangible manifestation of the Sangha's strength and resilience, a practical application of the teachings on unity and mutual support. This was the practice of dana, giving, not just of alms to sustain the body, but of your strength, your time, and your compassion to sustain the spirit and rebuild lives. Later, as the storm began to abate, leaving behind a landscape of mud and devastation, a scene of widespread destruction and loss, you sat with your fellow monks, exhausted but united by your shared ordeal and the common purpose that had driven your actions. The air, still thick with the smell of wet earth and the lingering scent of destruction, also carried the faint, familiar scent of sandalwood incense, a reminder of the spiritual anchor that had guided you through the physical tempest and provided solace in the aftermath. You looked back at the grove, battered and bruised by the storm, but still standing, a symbol of enduring strength and resilience. The question of the self, though momentarily overshadowed by the immediate crisis and the urgent need for action, remained, a seed planted by Elder Ananda that still held the potential for growth. But your perspective had shifted significantly, your understanding deepened by the raw reality of the day. You understood now that the pursuit of enlightenment was not a retreat from the world's suffering, but an active, compassionate engagement with it, a path that demanded courage and empathy. The lessons of impermanence were etched not only in the Buddha's words, but in the very landscape around you, in the lost homes, the scattered debris, and the profound sense of loss evident in the eyes of the villagers. The seed of doubt, planted by Elder Ananda, had not been entirely eradicated, but it remained a valuable reminder of the need for constant inquiry and a willingness to question even deeply held beliefs, a hallmark of true spiritual exploration. But alongside it, the storm had also sown a seed of wisdom, the profound understanding that true liberation was not just about understanding the absence of a self, but about embodying compassion and acting with kindness in a world that was inherently impermanent and often fraught with suffering, a lesson that would guide your path forward. Your active participation in the relief efforts following the storm demonstrated a profound embodiment of compassion in action. The scent of sandalwood incense still clung to your robes, a comforting constant in the wake of the recent storm. Yet, the air within the Sangha's temporary encampment, nestled on higher ground, was thick with a different kind of turbulence. The raw grief and physical exhaustion from the flood had begun to recede, replaced by the unsettling hum of unresolved questions and emerging fissures within the community. You found yourself drawn to the edge of the gathered monks, a quiet observer, trying to piece together the currents of conversation that swirled around you. The topic that dominated hushed discussions was the arrival of a man named Ujjala. He was a merchant, and his reputation preceded him like a shadow. Whispers spoke of his vast wealth, amassed not entirely through honest means, and accounts suggested his dealings involved questionable trade practices and a general disregard for the moral fiber of the communities he profited from. Yet, Ujjala had approached the Buddha with an extraordinary offer to fund the construction of a permanent monastery, a place of learning and refuge that would stand for generations, thereby providing a much-needed sense of permanence after the recent devastation. You saw the Buddha, listening patiently as Ujjala, a man whose silk robes seemed out of place amidst the rougher cloth of the monks, spoke with an almost practiced sincerity. Ujjala gestured expansively, describing his vision of grand halls, serene meditation spaces, and libraries filled with precious scrolls, effectively painting a picture of an institution that would become a beacon of the Dhamma and a testament to its enduring power, thus showcasing his intent to serve a higher purpose. "Esteemed Buddha," Ujjala said, his voice resonating with what seemed like genuine devotion, though you couldn't quite shake the unease that settled in your stomach. "I have witnessed the transformative power of your teachings, especially in the face of recent adversity. I wish to contribute to this noble endeavor, to ensure that your wisdom can reach even more souls. My wealth, though perhaps acquired through less direct means, can now serve a higher purpose, offering a chance for genuine merit." The offer was immense, representing security, permanence, and the potential for the Dhamma to flourish in ways that were previously unimaginable, a stark contrast to the temporary nature of your current refuge. Yet the source of that wealth gnawed at you, because the Buddha himself had spoken extensively on the importance of right livelihood, of avoiding professions that cause harm, making this a direct ethical challenge. How could a monastery dedicated to the cessation of suffering be built upon wealth derived from the very causes of suffering that the teachings sought to overcome? You found yourself in a small group, including Elder Ananda, the monk who had voiced his profound questions just days ago, and a younger, more fervent monk named Sariputta, known for his sharp intellect and unwavering adherence to the Vinaya, thus representing diverse perspectives on the dilemma. "This is a critical juncture," Elder Ananda stated, his brow furrowed in deep thought. "The Buddha has always emphasized that the purity of the Sangha is paramount. To accept tainted wealth, even for a noble purpose, could be seen as a compromise of our core principles, setting a precedent that legitimizes the accumulation of wealth through ethically questionable means." Sariputta, ever direct, nodded emphatically, adding, "Indeed, the Buddha's teachings on right livelihood are clear. Do not engage in trade that harms others, he has said, and Ujjala's past dealings are well known, making this a direct challenge to our ethical foundation. To accept his donation is to, in effect, cleanse his past actions with the Dhamma, a dangerous entanglement that could compromise our integrity." You felt the weight of their arguments, the logical progression from the Buddha's ethical framework, but you also saw the practical implications, as the Sangha, though growing, was still reliant on the precarious nature of alms and the fluctuating generosity of the common people, making stability a significant concern. "But," you interjected, your voice hesitant, "the Buddha also teaches that the Dhamma is for everyone, regardless of their past, and he accepted alms from all manner of people. Perhaps this is an opportunity for Ujjala to truly transform, to use his wealth for good and find genuine merit through this act." Sariputta turned to you, his gaze sharp, noting that. "That is a subtle distinction, my friend, as alms are sustenance, basic needs for survival, given freely and without expectation. This is a massive endowment, a partnership that could bind us to his influence, and by extension, to the very activities we condemn, thus creating a complex ethical entanglement." "And what of the good it could achieve?" Elder Ananda mused, his gaze drifting towards the devastated landscape, recognizing that the Buddha himself said that all compounded things are impermanent, and our current encampment is temporary, meaning a permanent structure for the Dhamma to be firmly established is a worthy goal. And if Ujjala's wealth can facilitate that, even with his past, is that not a skillful means of bringing good into the world? This pragmatic view offered a different interpretation of the Buddha's teachings on skillful means. The dilemma was multifaceted, as on one hand, the ethical purity of the Sangha, the integrity of the Dhamma itself, seemed to demand a rejection of wealth derived from harmful activities, while on the other hand, the opportunity to build a lasting institution that could provide immense benefit to the community was undeniably compelling, forcing a difficult choice between abstract principles and tangible results. How could one weigh the intangible value of moral integrity against the tangible alleviation of suffering for so many displaced by the storm? As if to punctuate the gravity of the situation, a different kind of tension began to simmer amongst the monks, as the recent storm, while a shared experience of hardship, had also highlighted existing fault lines within the Sangha, particularly regarding the interpretation of monastic conduct. The matter of monastic discipline, or Vinaya, which had been a quiet undercurrent, now surged to the surface, driven by differing views on renunciation and communal responsibility. A group of monks, led by a stern elder named Kasyapa, a man known for his rigid adherence to the rules, had been openly questioning the less stringent interpretations of certain monastic practices that were becoming prevalent, believing that the growing size and diversity of the Sangha were leading to a watering down of the strict discipline that the Buddha had originally laid out. Kasyapa felt that the Buddha's instructions regarding the acceptance of gifts and the interaction between monks and lay people were being too leniently applied, potentially compromising the Sangha's commitment to simple living. You found yourself caught between these two brewing storms, the ethical quandary of Ujjala's donation and the internal debate over monastic conduct, issues that felt deeply intertwined as they both concerned the integrity and future direction of the Sangha. The question of how the Sangha should be sustained and structured was intrinsically linked to the purity of its mission and the integrity of its message, as exemplified by Kasyapa's concerns. The core of Kasyapa's argument, as you overheard it from various discussions, centered on the Buddha's instructions regarding the acceptance of gifts and the interaction between monks and lay people, where he felt that some monks were becoming too comfortable with the comforts offered by patrons. Kasyapa believed that this could lead to a compromise of their renunciation, stating, "The Buddha instructed us to accept alms with discernment. He did not advocate for the accumulation of possessions, even for the greater good." This new monastery, funded by a man of dubious character, represents a departure from the path of simple living, a temptation that will only lead to further compromises. A counter-argument was being mounted by monks who had experienced the benefits of Ujjala's preliminary aid, food and shelter provided to those displaced by the flood, emphasizing the practicalities of the situation and the immediate need for resources to rebuild and to continue the work of compassion, which highlighted the immediate benefits of accepting such support. The Buddha himself said that all compounded things are impermanent, reasoned a younger monk, his face earnest. Our current encampment is temporary, and to have a permanent structure, a place where the Dhamma can be firmly established, is a worthy goal. Therefore, if Ujjala's wealth can facilitate that, even with his past, is that not a skillful means of bringing good into the world? You observed Elder Ananda trying to mediate between these differing viewpoints, listening patiently to Kassyapa's concerns about the erosion of discipline and the potential for corruption, while also hearing the arguments of those who saw the pragmatic benefits of Ujjala's offer and the need for adaptation in a growing Sangha. He would gently remind Kassyapa and his followers that the Buddha's teachings are not rigid dogma, but a living path of wisdom and compassion. We must remain vigilant against greed and attachment, certainly, but we must also be discerning in how we apply the Dhamma to the ever-changing circumstances of life, as the intention behind the offering and our own mindful engagement with it are crucial. The complexity of the situation pressed in on you. As if Ujjala's donation was accepted, it could be seen as a tacit endorsement of his past actions, potentially compromising the Sangha's purity if it relied on wealth generated through the suffering of others. Conversely, if they rejected it, they might be turning their backs on a vital opportunity to further the Dhamma, an opportunity that might never come again, creating a difficult choice. Then there was the matter of Kassyapa's dissent, as his concerns about monastic conduct were not entirely unfounded, and you had noticed the subtle shifts in the Sangha's daily life, from the simple begging bowls to more substantial provisions from patrons, indicating a potential departure from the original strict discipline. You understood the Buddha's teaching on the Eightfold Path, right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, all of which were being tested by these events, as your own understanding of right livelihood was being challenged by the situation. Your thoughts were consumed by the ethical implications, and your speech was reserved, as you carefully weighed your words in this charged atmosphere, recognizing that your actions should be guided by wisdom and compassion, but the path to achieving that was unclear. The choice before the Sangha was not merely about bricks and mortar, but about the very essence of their spiritual commitment, as accepting Ujjala's donation could be seen as a pragmatic adaptation or a Faustian bargain, a dilution of principles for the sake of material advancement. The Buddha himself remained a figure of imperturbable calm, listening to all sides with his gaze encompassing the room, absorbing the nuances of each argument, and encouraging further discussion rather than offering an immediate definitive answer, thereby demonstrating the importance of mindful consideration in decision-making. You realized that this was not a situation with a simple right or wrong answer, but rather a test of discernment, wisdom, and the Sangha's ability to navigate the complexities of the world while remaining true to its core values, a process that required a careful examination of intentions, consequences, and the ultimate purpose of their shared journey. You have witnessed the intricate dance between ethical purity and pragmatic necessity that began to shape the early Sanga's approach to worldly affairs. The scent of sandalwood incense, usually a gentle whisper in the quiet air of the bamboo grove, today felt like a heavy blanket, pressing down with the unspoken weight of discord. You sat cross-legged on your worn mat, the familiar rough weave of your robes a comfort against your skin. Around you, the faces of your fellow monks were a tapestry of unease, their usual serene expressions replaced by furrowed brows and averted gazes. Elder Bhikkhu Ananda, a monk whose wisdom had been a beacon for many, including yourself, stood before the Buddha, his voice carrying a tremor entirely new to you. "Esteemed Buddha," Ananda began, his hands clasped before him, "I have meditated deeply on your teachings of impermanence, of the absence of a fixed self. And while I honor your insights, I find myself wrestling with a question that gnaws at my peace." This moment marked a significant turning point, where the very foundations of the Dhamma were being examined through the lens of one of its most respected disciples, raising profound questions about the nature of reality and the path to liberation for all within the Sangha. "You speak of the dissolution of the self," Ananda continued, his voice gaining a touch more volume, "that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. Yet, when I observe the world, when I see the suffering of beings, when I feel the pain of loss, does not this very experience, this suffering, imply a self that suffers? If there is no I to experience pain, then who is it that we seek to liberate?" A ripple of expectation laced with apprehension passed through the gathered monks, and you felt a prickle of unease yourself. Ananda, a man whose long years of ascetic practice before finding the Dhamma were widely respected, was voicing doubts that could easily sway many within the community, touching upon the very core of what it meant to be a seeker of truth. The silence that followed Ananda's question was profound, the rustling of the bamboo seeming to hold its breath as the weighty inquiry settled upon each listener. You looked towards the Buddha, whose expression remained one of serene attentiveness, offering no immediate response, allowing Ananda's words to be examined by each mind. You remembered your own journey, the years of self-mortification, the desperate attempts to find a solid, unchanging core within yourself, only to find emptiness and frustration, making Ananda's current struggle with the concept of anatta, no self, particularly resonant. The Buddha finally spoke, his voice a calm, clear stream that cut through the rising tide of confusion, addressing Ananda's profound question. "Ananda," he said, his tone gentle, "you ask a question that has troubled many seeking the truth. You speak of the I that suffers, the me that strives. But let us examine this I more closely." He picked up a small, smooth stone from the ground, holding it up for all to see. "This stone," he said, "appears to be a single, solid entity. But is it not, in truth, composed of countless particles, elements, and forces? Does it have an enduring, independent existence, or is it a temporary aggregation?" This analogy was a powerful, tangible illustration, moving the discussion from abstract philosophy to observable reality, a hallmark of the Buddha's teaching method. He then let the stone drop, and it broke into several smaller pieces, demonstrating the impermanence even of seemingly solid objects. Even this stone, which seems so permanent, is subject to change, to disintegration, and so it is with all phenomena, including what we call the self. There is no permanent, unchanging I to be found, no core essence that remains constant. What we experience as a self is a process, a continuous flow of interconnected causes and effects, a bundle of changing perceptions, feelings, thoughts, and volitions. The Buddha's explanation was not a dismissal of Ananda's experience, but a skillful reframing, guiding the monks toward a deeper understanding of interconnectedness and the illusion of a fixed identity. The Buddha then looked directly at Ananda, his gaze filled with compassion. The suffering you perceive arises not from a self that exists independently, but from our mistaken belief in such a self. We cling to this impermanent process as if it were a solid, unchanging entity. When this illusion is recognized, when we see that there is no inherent I to be protected, to be gratified, to be harmed, then the craving, the attachment, and the suffering begin to dissolve. This revelation offered a powerful insight. The cessation of suffering stemmed not from liberating a permanent self, but from understanding the illusory nature of that very self, a subtle yet crucial distinction that challenged the monks' ingrained notions. Even as the intellectual storm began to subside, another kind of tempest was brewing outside the grove, a tangible force that dwarfed the philosophical discourse. The gentle breeze that had carried the Buddha's words suddenly turned cold and fierce, the sky darkening with alarming speed as the rustling of the bamboo transformed into a violent thrashing. Then a low rumble escalated into a deafening roar, the ground beneath you vibrating with an intensity that suggested the earth itself was in turmoil, forcing an abrupt shift from contemplation to urgent action. "The river!" someone shouted, their voice barely audible above the din, as brown, swirling water began to snake its way through the grove, rising with alarming speed, transforming the sanctuary into a place of immediate danger. Panic flickered through the Sangha, the younger monks beginning to stir as their faces reflected genuine alarm, a stark contrast to the Buddha's unwavering composure. This visceral encounter with the power of nature served as a brutal, real-time lesson in impermanence, far more immediate than any philosophical discussion. The Buddha remained seated, his composure unshakable. But the monks were already beginning to move, their faces now reflecting genuine alarm as the water rose. You realized that the fear, though present, was tempered by a sense of duty and a need to act, a shift from solitary quest to communal responsibility. "We must seek higher ground," you heard yourself say, the words coming out with a surprising steadiness, a testament to the practical application of your training, even in the face of overwhelming natural forces. As you moved out of the grove, the force of the wind and rain pushed against you, revealing the devastating impact on the small hamlets that dotted the landscape, their simple houses vulnerable to the rising waters. The villagers whom you had observed with detached curiosity were now in desperate need, their cries of distress echoing above the roaring wind and crashing water, a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of all beings and the immediate call to compassion. This was not a comfortable meditation. This was direct engagement with suffering in its most palpable form. You joined a group of monks wading through waist-deep water, carrying branches and other debris, heading towards the nearest village to offer aid. The air, thick with the smell of wet earth and churning water, was a powerful sensory experience that overshadowed the familiar scent of sandalwood incense, grounding you firmly in the present reality of the crisis. This immediate, hands-on engagement with the physical and emotional toll of the disaster provided a stark contrast to abstract debate, embodying the very essence of compassionate action. You saw a woman struggling to pull a child out of a flooded dwelling, and without a second thought, you waded towards her, offering your arm for support, the child's sodden clothes rough against your hands. This was not a learned philosophical concept. This was the direct application of your training in action, demonstrating how the teachings on interconnectedness and mutual aid translated into tangible support for those in need. This raw, immediate experience of helping solidified your understanding of the Dhamma in a way that pure intellectual contemplation never could. Your experience with the Buddha's teachings on the nature of self and the challenges of compassion reveals the richness of spiritual practice in ancient India. The drought, a relentless adversary, had begun to parch the land, turning the earth to dust and shrinking the meager water sources that sustained the Sangha and the surrounding villages. This shared hardship amplified the internal divisions, making the debate over Ujjala's donation and the proposed statue feel even more urgent and fraught. You observed Elder Ananda, his usual calm demeanor strained as he presented the compromise to the assembled monks. A modest carved relief of Ujjala, a testament to his contribution as a donor rather than a figure of worship, accompanied by a clear statement reinforcing the Sangha's core principles. Kasyapa, the elder monk who championed strict adherence to the Vinaya, the monastic code of conduct, remained a steadfast voice of dissent. He argued that even a subtle depiction of an individual, especially one with Ujjala's questionable past, would invite attachment and ego into the heart of their sacred space, thereby compromising the Dhamma itself. However, the practical realities of the escalating drought began to weigh heavily on the minds of many. Monks like Vimala Kirti, who had witnessed the suffering of the displaced villagers firsthand, highlighted the critical need for a stable refuge. They pointed out that the temporary encampment was unsustainable, and the proposed monastery, funded by Ujjala, represented their best chance to provide long-term aid and spiritual sustenance. Vimala Kirti reasoned that a skillfully crafted compromise, one that channeled Ujjala's desire for remembrance into a reminder of impermanence rather than a focus of veneration, could serve as a pragmatic means to achieve a greater spiritual good. This perspective suggested that the Buddha's teachings were adaptable, meant to guide rather than rigidly dictate actions, and that skillful means often involved navigating worldly complexities for the sake of alleviating suffering. As the debate continued, you found yourself mediating between these opposing viewpoints, your own experiences as an ascetic informing your understanding of both the need for strict discipline and the dangers of rigid adherence. You spoke with Kasyapa, acknowledging his deep-seated fears regarding the potential erosion of the Sangha's ideals and the subtle infiltration of ego and worldly attachments. Following this, you engaged with Vimalakirti, listening to his impassioned arguments for compassion and the urgent practical needs of the community, especially in the face of the worsening drought. Your role became that of a bridge, attempting to foster understanding between those who prioritized doctrinal purity and those who advocated for pragmatic adaptation, all while holding fast to the spirit of the Buddha's teachings. The drought's intensification underscored the urgency of these discussions. The drying earth and dwindling water supplies made the Sangha's own encampment increasingly precarious, directly impacting their ability to provide aid to the surrounding villages. This external pressure began to shift the focus, prompting a re-evaluation of the true meaning of renunciation and compassion. The Buddha's gentle guidance during an alms round, where he spoke of using skillful means to alleviate suffering and not allowing rigid principles to blind them to the needs of others, resonated deeply, encouraging a search for balance between unwavering ethics and practical action. This subtle encouragement prompted a wider consideration of how the offering and the proposed statue could be reframed as a reminder of impermanence rather than an endorsement of ego. Consequently, the compromise began to gain broader acceptance, a fragile agreement born from shared hardship and a pressing need for action. The decision was made. Ujjala's donation would be accepted, and the monastery would be built with a modest relief carving as a subtle reminder of the impermanence of worldly status, accompanied by a clear statement reaffirming the Sangha's core principles. While Kasyapa and his followers expressed their continued reservations, they agreed to abide by the collective decision, recognizing the overarching need for unity in the face of the drought's devastating impact. This hard-won compromise, though imperfect, allowed the Sangha to move forward with the monumental task of construction. The construction itself became a testament to the Sangha's resilience and their commitment to the Dhamma. You found yourself actively engaged in physical labor, hauling stones and digging foundations alongside your fellow monks, the rough texture of the earth a constant presence. The debates faded, replaced by the rhythmic sounds of communal effort, the shared struggle against the relentless sun and the pervasive dust. The scent of sandalwood incense, though still faintly present on your robes, was now interwoven with the earthy aroma of construction, a tangible representation of the Sangha's enduring spirit and their dedication to serving those in need, even amidst the most profound trials. The collective effort, undertaken with a renewed sense of purpose, demonstrated the practical application of the Eightfold Path in their daily lives. You understand now why the Sanga's ability to adapt its practices while maintaining its core ethical principles was so significant in the face of historical challenges. As the evening deepens, imagine walking beside the awakened one, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of ancient trees. You listen as he shares the Four Noble Truths, illuminating the path to peace, and then the Noble Eightfold Path, a map for navigating life with wisdom and compassion. His words, like a calming balm, settle within you. May the quiet contemplation of his teachings ease your mind and invite deep, restorative sleep. Let the stillness of this moment wash over you, carrying away the day's cares. Rest now, and may your dreams be as serene as a lotus blooming in the quiet dawn. Good night.